All right, viewers, welcome to the Black Agenda Podcast. I'm your co-host, Adrian Guest, along with co-host Devin. To continue our HBCU awareness series, we're bringing you Tuskegee University and their interim president, Dr. Charlotte Morris. Dr. Morris actually began her tenure at Tuskegee University as interim president on November 1st of 2020. Her 30-plus year tenure at Tuskegee has included numerous leadership and faculty appointments at the college and university. Her recent appointment as interim president is her third appointment to the university's top post, the first being in 2010, following the retirement of President Benjamin J. Payton. A native of Kosciuszko, Mississippi, which is not very far from where I'm from, Dr. Morris completed a bachelor's degree in business education at Jackson State University, a master's degree in business administration and management at Delta State University, and a PhD in education and business administration from Kansas State University. She has completed additional graduate level coursework at the Harvard University Graduate School of Education's Institute for Educational Management, and also higher educational administration coursework at Southern Louisiana University, Carbondale, and Summer Institutes in Curriculum Development and Higher Education. She holds membership in the Society for Human Resources Management, Beta Gamma Sigma National Honor Society in Business, the Golden Key National Honor Society, and the National Council of Negro Women and African American on Education. So Dr. Morris is very, very qualified to talk to us about the state of HBCUs. And Dr. Morris, we're very, very excited to have you with us today.
Thank you so very much. Pleased to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And just to get right into it, Dr. Morris, we've been speaking to a variety of leaders from HBCUs. Because we wanted to do an HBCU awareness series to honor March as HBCU Awareness Month. And it's just really amazing to read the history of each institution and to just see the determination of each leader to bring value to their students, the colleagues, and the community. Really, really remarkable. And Tuskegee is no exception to this. If you're in the Black community, hopefully anybody, you should know that Tuskegee has a very rich history. Names like Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, along with the Tuskegee Airmen, come into mind. It can even be noted that Tuskegee had involvement in the fight for civil rights, and there's a trail to honor the people that fought to help with civil rights. So being with that rich history of Tuskegee, our first question is, what has it been like for you to just lead such a great institution?
It's like something I've never dreamed, really. I started out at Tuskegee in the College of Business as but as associate professor and associate dean. I had no inkling that eventually I would be at the head of the university with all of the, I would say, challenges that go along with that position. But being at Tuskegee is like none other than you would imagine. You know, the students talk about this Tuskegee spirit or the hallowed grounds of Booker T. Washington.
Mm.
So if you put all of that together and then talk about the programs that we offer, we are a small university, but very diverse. We have 41 bachelor's programs. We have 13 master's programs, and we have 4 PhD programs. We also have engineering, architecture. We also have the agricultural sciences because we are a land grant university. You see, the 1890 land grant universities and Tuskegee University, which means that we were an add-on, but nonetheless, we still have that distinction. So we are moving toward the cutting edge of programs. We have several patents from our faculty. We have various centers of excellence on our campus. So when you think about what Booker T. Washington started with at Tuskegee, the $2,000, and what other presidents have been able to move forward with the university, I think that it's a tribute to those 7 individuals. We are 140 years old, and we've only had 7 presidents. So it's remarkable from whence we came and where we are now, but we are still striving to get better.
Wow, and that's a something we've heard from a lot of HBCUs, striving to get better, being on the cutting edge. And our next question is kind of more about you and your background. And so we know that, we read your bio. It's, you're Jackson State and Delta State graduate. And so when you were a young student coming up, what was your perception of HBCUs? And did you ever have to prove that the education you got at JSU and Delta State was just as good as any other PWI school?
No, I didn't have to prove that because I worked hard at Jackson State and graduated with honors and also at Delta State. So when I went to my PhD program, then I knew that I had to study, of course, to maintain that. But there were 30 of us there at the time. I'm going to tell you how old I am shortly on. But anyway, there were 30 of us at the time at K-State compared to 50,000 of the other races combined with international students and all. So I didn't have a problem studying with them or reacting in the classroom environment with them because I knew what the requirements were in order for me to succeed in that area. And so I didn't have that kind of stigma attached to my degree at Jackson State and Delta State. However, there are some who graduated from some smaller colleges that were not valued, you might say. It wasn't that they weren't good institutions, but they just were not valued as the state institutions are like Jackson State and Delta State.
Yeah, and that's something we heard too, from Dr. Larry Robinson down at FAMU. He talked to us about how, he started at I think it was Lemoyne Owens College, and then he moved on to I think it was
Memphis State,
Memphis State, and then Washington University, I believe, to get his it was like a master's in like nuclear engineering. He's very, very smart, but when he got there, he said that, he had to, there were people who didn't value it the same way. And when he was thinking of going into that, people were telling him, you probably should go to other schools that, like your courses weren't rigorous enough when you were at Lemoyne Owens. And so he talked about that. So that's why we wanted to ask. But we know the perception is out there that it's, somehow less than. It's not true, but people always have that perception. So we just wanted to ask that. And so that's going to do it for our first segment here. And when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about a little bit more about that, the perception that society has of HBCUs, but also talk about some of the accomplishments of institutions like Tuskegee University. So stick with us. And when we come back after the break, we'll discuss that.
Thank you.
Here at Tuskegee University, some of our historical figures like Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, those are some of the people that created or started that Tuskegee experience.
This place is so different. You have a support system, a real support system. We may ball and parlay, but the most important thing we do is graduate. And after we graduate, we accelerate in everything we do.
All right, viewers, let's get back into it. Remember, we're continuing our HBCU Awareness Series conversation with Dr. Charlotte Morris, Interim President of Tuskegee University. The second segment, Dr. Morris, we want to really get into the societal perception of HBCUs. We've been really preaching that HBCUs can go toe-to-toe with any university. And just to give some people some facts about Tuskegee that we saw, here's a couple of facts. Tuskegee is the #1 producer of African-American aerospace science engineers in the nation, the only HBCU with a fully accredited College of Veterinary Medicine that offers the doctoral degree and produces over 75% of the African-American vets in the world, and the only college university campus in the nation to be designated a National Historic Site by the U.S. Congress. So, there's no reason, that you can't see that Tuskegee is doing awesome. I mean, you can clearly see, especially when you talk about these engineering, accreditations, really, really doing great. But that doesn't really change the narrative, unfortunately, that you see in society, because whenever you see, especially in high school with educators and counselors, and even some parents, they never really talk about, Tuskegee's engineering department. When you hear, engineering or veterinary medicine, particularly if you're in Mississippi, you hear about Mississippi State. You may even hear about Georgia Tech or something like that. But you never hear about Tuskegee, especially when, whenever you have these sorts of statistics. So our question to you, Dr. Morris, how do we change the narrative for Tuskegee and other HBCUs by large to show that HBCUs can really go toe-to-toe with any college or university?
Thank you. The first thing we need to do is start marketing our programs and telling our own story. Can't depend on others to tell our story for us. And once we do that, we already have the individuals out there who are examples of what we offer, and our engineering students, for instance, all of them have jobs before they even graduate from the university or they go to graduate school. So we need to put our story out, tell all the good news and tell some of the bad news too, because all of our institutions have challenges, whether they are PWIs or HBCUs. We all have our challenges, but we have a bit more of a challenge because we have to educate as we go along. We have to educate other people to look at our students. For instance, we are just getting to the point that we have Fortune 500 companies coming to our campus to interview our students. That was not true 10, 15 years ago, for instance. So our students get the same opportunities, and some of them outshine a lot of people from public universities and PWIs, and they are surprised to see that our students know what they know. But one of the advantages of going to an HBCU, you're going to get that nurturing environment. You're going to get people who care. You're going to get people who tell you the truth. You've got to, if you want to graduate or if you want to do this, you have got to study. You've got to come to class. And all of those things help to develop the whole individual. We go back to Booker T. Washington that said the head, the hands, and the heart. You got to educate the whole person in order to have a successful person in this global workplace. And they've got to have diverse talents. They just can't specialize in one thing and can't do another. They've got to have the diverse talents, and that's what we try and teach.
That's great. And that's exactly what we wanted why we did this, this series, is to get this, to try to help with telling that story. and trying to, tell people what's happening down at Tuskegee University. And, we've kind of talked about, some of the achievements by the university. And that, like you say, came with enormous challenges. Every institution has their own challenges. But one big story, just to show that things really are happening down there. One thing that came out this week, or maybe about a week ago, was a story that came out that the Department of Defense is launching an aerospace education center of excellence at Tuskegee University, and that is humongous. And you're talking about the school that is already the #1 producer of African American aerospace engineers, and so you just add that on top, and what you see is a high performing institution that people are just now starting to recognize exists in Tuskegee, Alabama. So our question is, with things like the Department of Defense, you say Fortune 500 companies are just now getting in there. What did it take for the university to get to this point, to be such a high achieving institution? What was the focus, the drive to get here? And then also, how have you been able to strike these types of partnerships, and have you been successful in getting that message out to prospective students and parents?
We have, but Tuskegee has major strengths in the STEM areas. Number one, we do the liberal arts, but our strengths are in the STEM areas because of Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver, and some other instructors who were good in the sciences. So that's our major strength. But when you talk about what Tuskegee has been able to accomplish, we are number 4 among HBCUs, according to the U.S. News and World Report from last year. We are also number 20 in regional universities in the South. We are number 20 best undergraduate teaching institutions, and we keep that going because that's what the university was first founded to, was to teach the Black kids. So we still maintain that, and we are 33 among all universities in best value schools. So we, all of these things put together make for a good portfolio, you might say, for an institution like Tuskegee. And we have several centers of excellence, like the one that you mentioned. It's the most recent one that we received. But we have material science and engineering. We have a PhD program in material science and engineering. So we have a lot of, I think our sponsored programs now total about $46 million. So we have a lot of faculty members who are doing research and who are getting out there writing proposals to these various entities to get grants and contracts. So it takes all of that together to build a first class, as we want to say, state-of-the-art institution.
No, and that's exactly right. I mean, and that's extremely impressive, just hearing you kind of lay it out there. And so that's what we wanted this series for. But I just want to see, what is it that makes Tuskegee so special and able to achieve these things? I know you all have a steadfast focus on teaching Black students, but how have you been able to sustain that? Because I know you said you've only had 7 presidents, so that obviously helps with having that a focus on teaching sustain over such a long period. But what is going, like, when you get to Tuskegee, what is the message that is drilled into students to ensure they go on to be lifelong learners, but also excel in their careers?
Well, that's part of our mission, actually, is to train individuals to become lifelong learners and to get an education that will serve them well in working in the global economy, not just within the states, but globally. And so we try and instill in them that thirst for knowledge and continuous education, because if you go and get a bachelor's degree and you stop at that point, then you stop learning and you will cease to be valuable to anyone after a while, because this is a fast moving world now, and you have to be prepared in order to maintain work, simple work. So, that's the economy that we live in.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think you have to get to a point to where you've got to be competitive. We live, 2020 has shown us that, with this virtual environment, you can easily be replaced, or, things can go to a situation where they don't need as much of a workforce. So you've got to figure out how you can be, competitive, how you can be on the cutting edge. And that's what you all are, preparing students to do at Tuskegee. So that's really, really awesome that y'all are doing that. That's going to do it here for our second segment, talking about societal perception. We're going to take another break, and when we get into it, we want to talk a little bit more about diversity and awareness. So viewers, stick with us, enjoy the break, and we'll be right back.
All right, viewers, welcome back. We are continuing our conversation with Dr. Charlotte Morris from Tuskegee University. She's the current interim president. And so we've talked a lot about the accomplishments at Tuskegee and what they're doing to stay on the cutting edge of the ever-changing workforce. And so, Dr. Morris, during our series, we've spoken with other HBCU presidents, and some have talked about dealing with the new challenge of the 21st century, which is that the environment for prospective students has changed a little bit, where now you're having more African-American students who are attending, predominantly white institutions now. And so that's added a new challenge where we know that your main focus, of course, is teaching Black students, but some other HBCUs have started to maybe focus on international students and building awareness in other, racial communities here in the States about HBCUs can educate not just Black students, but everybody. And it's a place that anybody can go and get a great education. And so we just wanted to ask you, at Tuskegee, how is the university, adjusting to this new environment of having to compete more, I guess, for African-American students? And what is the focus when it comes to diversity?
Well, we do have some non-African-American students, and we have international students. Our College of Veterinary Medicine, however, has the largest number of white students, because students who cannot get in programs at other institutions, of course, come to Tuskegee. And so we had to set a limit there on the number, and it says at least half and half. But we educate all students, even though Tuskegee was organized to train African American students. We still, even in the beginning, we had an open door policy to anyone who wanted to come. Of course, back then, of course, only African Americans came. But what has not filtered into individuals and our friends on the other side is that HBCUs came about because we were unable to go to their institutions. And that's something that they have trouble remembering or trouble understanding, that we didn't just build HBCUs. Why y'all got to have your own schools? Well, we have them because we couldn't go to yours. And so we and that's why our institution was organized, because this slave who could not read and write, right at the turn of the Reconstruction, decided that I want my people in Tuskegee to have a school to go to. And it was his idea. His name is Lewis Adams, but it was his idea to talk to the legislature and make a deal with the legislature. Okay, you give us a school to teach our kids, and I'll get my Black community to vote for you in the next election of state for the state legislature. And so that's what happened. And that's how Tuskegee started. Yes, Booker T. Washington built the school, but it was Lewis Adams who conceived the idea that there was a need for a school for the Blacks in Macon County and in Tuskegee. So we have to preserve the legacy. We have to preserve the education. We have to preserve the lives of our students and the those forerunners who worked very hard to make sure that we kept our institutions. And so it's very important to those of us who went to HBCUs and some who didn't, to have that HBCU experience. You can talk to any student that has gone on in the other direction, and where do you see them at homecoming? Where do you see them doing the step shows? Where do you see them at Founders Day or other historic events on the campus? They are at an HBCU. So we just have to preserve our heritage.
You are absolutely right. It just, it's so interesting whenever we, as we've done these interviews, because it's just like a common thread between HBCU administrators at your level, to where you all understand that, you've got to keep the fire burning, because there's going to be future generations coming beyond you that need, Tuskegee, that need, Howard and FAMU and Grambling. So that's really awesome to kind of see that everyone, even it's not like y'all got together and talked about this before, doing interviews, but that's just really awesome to see that. Our next question here, funding we see is a big deal for HBCUs. Depending on who you are, you may have a huge endowment, and if you're not, you may not have as large of an endowment. And one of the things that we know about HBCUs is that they're really good about not passing on the cost of operating expenses onto the students. They really keep their tuition low, and they give out a lot of scholarships. Instead, the institutions really allow, the institutions really are responsible to the alumni as far as giving, and they really depend upon them to fund the HBCUs. But one of the things we realize is that giving can sometimes be low, and sometimes there needs to be an interjection of funding from other sources. One of the things that we saw on your website is that Tuskegee is participating in a Home Depot Retool Your School vote. And our question is around the sense of this. Do you find your institution having to maybe participate in more competitions like this, the Home Depot's Retool Your School vote, to get the necessary funding it needs to do the things to operate? And what sort of advice might you give to a smaller institution to partner and network with some of these businesses to get the needed funding to get some of the things they need done?
We do have to get out and fundraise. We have to have a plan, and every so often we have to have a campaign to raise major funds, and we have to teach our alumni, our students, and all to give back. And you do that by treating them well when they are there, so that they will want to give back. And we try to instill good customer service, for instance, among our employees at the institution. We we encourage our faculty to write proposals to companies and organizations so that we can get funds. Recently, one of our board members got a $5 million scholarship grant from a single individual, and that helped bridge that little gap between whether or not a student has the resources to complete this semester or not. They may need $500, they may need $1,000, but whatever they need, this particular grant will give them that bridge. So we have to fundraise and get those type of resources so that our students can, number one, stay in school and graduate, because we want our graduation rate higher. We want our retention rate higher, and the finances of a person, a student, and their parents have a lot to do with that. We we are a private and state related institution, so we get a small amount, about $10 million, and that's not even a tenth of our annual budget. But I mean, it helps. We will miss it if we don't have it, but we get that from the state, and so our tuition is a little bit higher than a public institution, for instance, but we don't have out of state tuition. All of our students pay the same to go to Tuskegee. So I mean, our peer institutions, Morehouse, Spelman, those institutions, we all try and keep our tuition right around the same amount so that our students will not feel obligated to fluctuate between the institutions, and they can stay where they are and finish that degree and become a successful whatever they decide to do in life. So it's all about knowing where your strengths are, knowing who your friends are, and fundraise. We all have to do that, and we have to instill in our faculty and staff. No one is going to give unless you give to your own institution. Our alumni, the same thing. We have to have a certain percentage of our alumni, and I always tell them, if you can't give but $20, give the $20, and you can be counted in the percentage of alumni who give. And so that's where we start. And then once they start giving, then they will continue to give.
No, that's exactly right. And it's interesting that little tidbit that you gave at the end about making sure that you give, whether it's $20 or $5, you give something to where you're counted as far as, the percentage of alumni they give back to the university. Because we're talking with the provost from Howard, and he talked about when they go out and try to, strike, strategic partnerships with, whether it's creating a center of excellence and creating an endowment to go with that. The first question they get is, what percentage of your alumni donate back to the school? That's the first thing that they want to know. And so if you have a school that's struggling to get their alumni to donate, the outside world sees that and says, well, what's going on there? Why is there a disconnect? Why are they not giving back? And so it's interesting to hear that relationship there, because you don't really think about it in that way, that when you don't give back to the university, there are actually other people paying attention. You're sending a signal to them saying, well, I don't necessarily, I went to school there and I graduated, but now I'm not giving back. And people start to wonder what's going on with that. And so that's an interesting point there that I'm glad you made it. And so that's going to do it for our third segment here. We're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we'll get your final message here. We always like to wrap it up and put a big bow on it, like Adrian says, and send it off to our viewers. So we're going to take one last break and we'll be right back.
All right, viewers, let's go ahead and wrap up our interview today. We've had a really, really great conversation with Dr. Charlotte Morris. Remember, she is the interim president of Tuskegee University, continuing our HBCU awareness series conversation. So just to kind of set the stage for your final message, Dr. Morris, we know that HBCUs have worked diligently to correct the wrongs of the American past. They've really worked to educate our people and have produced so many graduates who've gone on to be leaders in their fields. HBCUs have been noted to be responsible for creating the middle class, the Black middle class that is in America, and for continuing to fill that gap to provide economic opportunities. When we look at it, even in healthcare, where that's not equally given, HBCUs have been pioneers in healthcare, and now they're even working to educate our communities about COVID-19 vaccines. When you look at it, HBCUs have produced some of the most prominent civil rights leaders, from MLK to Rosa Parks, and they've stood to march with them for civil rights and social justice. So it's easy to see that HBCUs are a backbone of American society and a driving force within the Black community. But we just want to, I guess, provide a final message for those people who still may not be convinced. Even after all of that and after our conversation, there may be some who are just listening and wondering, why do we need HBCUs? So Dr. Morris, leave us with a message that speaks to why we must strengthen our HBCUs for their future sustainability so that we can continue being champions in our society.
Okay. You know, it's hard for you to tell someone who is not an HBCU graduate how they need to perform in order to build another institution. But we all have a legacy of some sort, whether it's our parents or our grandparents or our great grandparents or whomever. And we need to encourage all of those individuals, descendants and all, to support Black colleges and keep the dirty laundry in the Black college community. We are our own worst enemy when it comes to that, because we we were stifled so long that we can't wait to be the first one to tell something now. So we've got to make sure that we protect our legacy, that we help to raise funds for our institutions, that we recognize where our weaknesses are and try and improve upon them. We know most of our private HBCUs are very old. They have old facilities, and all of them, if they're like Tuskegee, needs upgrading. Well, we are doing it one step at a time, one dorm at a time, because we can't afford to do all of them at the same time. And now we are grateful for the forgiveness package that came out of the Congress in 2020, because Tuskegee was the recipient of that, and to the tune of $115 million, because that's what was used to renovate some of our facilities. But they're still we got that so long ago that there are facilities that still need upgrading if we are going to stay on the cutting edge. And the thing that we should do is, our parents told us a long time ago, if you try and don't succeed, try again. So we can't stop trying. We have to continue to move forward. And if we continue moving forward without looking back, then we'll get to a successful point somewhere in our lifetime.
No, that's
go ahead. Go ahead, Devin.
No, I mean that's a powerful message there, and that's what needs to be heard for people, HBCU graduates or not. Understand that these institutions are vital, to the continued success of our community and other communities who, are looking for places to go to where they can get a great education and not be saddled with, thousands upon thousands of student debt, which you see a lot these days. And so, no, that's a very, very powerful message. And Adrian, you got your thoughts there?
No, the only thing I was going to say, it just further reinforces the need for, everybody, no matter, if you went to an HBCU or not, because, Devin and I, neither of us went to an HBCU, but we understand, the purpose that it has as an institution and a pillar within the community and throughout the entire Black community as a whole. So it's just awesome to hear that and to know that we have people, like you, Dr. Morris, who are at the helm, really fighting to make sure that, the class of 2050 is going to have a place, to go at Tuskegee University. So that's really fantastic. Viewers, we just want to, go ahead and recognize that we've had Dr. Charlotte Morris, interim president of Tuskegee University, on the show today, continuing our HBCU awareness series for HBCU Awareness Month. Dr. Morris, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate it for me and for my institution. Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And with that, viewers, what we're going to do, we're going to take our last break. When we return, Devin and I are going to end the episode as always. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. So as always, we like to end the show with giving you some updates and some things to look forward to as far as the podcast goes. So the interview with Dr. Charlotte Morris was amazing, and we were glad to have her on. But this is part of a bigger series where we are speaking to HBCU leaders all across the country as part of our HBCU Awareness series during the month of March, which is also HBCU Awareness Month. And so each week we'll be releasing a conversation with the leader at an HBCU on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So look out for those. And like I said, we have quite a lineup here. If you haven't already, we've had several interviews already come out. So you can go back and listen to our interview with Dr. Lee Robinson at FAMU. You can hear our interview with Dr. Wutaw, who is the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University. And then you can also listen to our interview with Dr. Rick Gallo from Grambling State University. All of them incredible, insightful interviews. So definitely, if you have a chance, go back, listen or watch it on YouTube. As always, we try to get you in different ways. And so in addition to our HBCU Awareness Series, we will be continuing our weekly roundups where we bring you the news every single Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook at Black Agenda Pod. That's where we bring you breaking news of the week, maybe some news you didn't hear about, maybe some stuff you did, but we talk about it through a lens, from the Black perspective. And so that's our way to bring you some things that happened this week. And so look out for that. And as always, we would like to tell people, this venture here is not free. We do appreciate any support we can get. And so Adrian's going to tell you where you can donate to us.
Yeah, Devin, it is not free. I see it every month whenever I get my Wells Fargo statements. But yeah, viewers, if you are a fan of the show, we'd love to have you become a patron of the show. All you've got to do, you can go to blackagendapod.com, click the donate button. Or if you listen to the audio podcast on our host site, Podbean, they also have an option that you can click on to donate from there. Either or, it's going to take you to that portal. We always say start off with $1 a month. It's really, really easy to blow $1 a month. It's even easier to give it to somebody that's going to do something with it, like Devin and myself. So we'd love to have you as a patron. There's a lot of gifts on there to where you can get shout outs. You can even suggest topics, maybe even be on our show. So definitely go to our website or listen to us on Patreon, or rather on Podbean, and you can do it that way. One of the other things that we're going to be doing throughout this year is honoring different charities. For the month of March, we're going to be recognizing the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, which really, really goes well with our HBCU Awareness Series because they work to give a lot of scholarships to students who are going to be going to HBCUs. In fact, their mission is to ensure student success by promoting educational excellence and preparing the next generation of workforce talent through leadership development. So I really wanted to recognize an institution like the Thurgood Marshall College Fund and just, say, hey, another great organization to give some money to, give money to us, and we can partner with them, be like a little middleman. So yeah, Devin, plenty of reasons to give money. We're looking to do a lot this year.
Absolutely. We got big things happening here. And so before we go, we always like to tell you to like, share, and follow us on social media so you don't miss out on some of the great things that we're going to be doing, like our HBCU Awareness series. And so you can find us on all the major platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Black Agenda Pod. It's also going to play at the end of this video. So make sure you see it and follow us, like us, and share us. Again, our handle is at Black Agenda Pod. So make sure you share that. You can also find us at blackagendapod.com. That's our new website where you can listen to all of our episodes. You can donate to us. You can read about us, the hosts. You can see our weekly roundups. It's kind of a one-stop shop for everything that we are doing here at the Black Agenda Podcast and everything. So make sure you check that out before we go here. And so that's going to do it for us and for this episode. And we just want to thank Dr. Charlotte Moores for coming on the show and speaking with us, and also thank Tuskegee University for making her available. And also, again, we always say it, make sure you check out these HBCUs and try to give back and do your part to make sure these institutions do continue to last and continue doing the amazing work they are doing. And so for me and Adrian here at the Black Agenda, we appreciate you watching and listening on your podcast app or on YouTube. And so we appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next time.